Welcome to Love and Abuse, the show about helping you identify poisonous communication and toxic behavior. You deserve to be treated with respect and kindness. That's why it's important that you learn to pinpoint manipulative and controlling behavior so that you keep your power and your sanity. I'm your host, Paul Coliani. Welcome to another episode of Love and Abuse. I just want to let you know that all information on this show is meant for educational purposes only. Always seek a professional for your mental health and well-being. And I'm just going to dedicate this episode to an email that I received with the subject line that says, all I have to say is thank you. So I'm going to read this to you. It says, Dear Paul, in the past 6 to 8 months, I've really started to feel and notice that I am in a verbally and emotionally abusive marriage. Through these realizations and with the help from my therapist, my support group, like family and friends, it led me to self-help books, research, and your podcast. When I came across Love and Abuse, I was first looking for a specific topic about manipulation through threats, such as suicide, which my husband does to me often. I then became a regular listener. Yes, I do have an episode, if you have to deal with this with anyone in your life, when the person threatens suicide, if you leave, if you don't do what they say, that is emotional abuse, and it does need to be addressed. And I have very specific pointers in that episode. So you can go to loveandabuse.com and just look for the word suicide. You'll find the episode I'm talking about. So she goes on to say, I became a regular listener, and I felt like you were speaking directly to me. Your podcast has helped me realize my self-worth and gave me the empowerment to finally tell my abuser, I want a divorce. I finally mustered up the courage and told him I want to move on and I'm ready to go our separate ways. Something I haven't been able to do for 13 years. 13 years I have been battered, abused, belittled, and it has taken my sparkle and voice away and caused me to be a shell of a person. With all the tragedy going on in the world right now, ironically, it's been a good time to self-reflect and grow. I want to thank you for helping me see that I am deserving of kindness and respect and that my kids don't need to live in a toxic environment anymore. I'm in my 30s and I feel like life is just beginning. You have helped me get there and accomplish this. Thank you, Paul. Thank you for reassuring me that I'm not alone and I'm not crazy and giving me the strength and my voice back that I needed for so long to say enough is enough. I am a victim of domestic violence, and while it pains me to say that out loud or type it out, it's liberating to acknowledge it. You helped me save my life and my daughter's lives so that they won't grow up thinking that what my marriage was is normal. And even though I'm terrified of the unknown, I am more terrified if I stay another day in a toxic relationship. Thank you from the bottom of my now stronger heart. Thank you so much for sharing that. I'm not going to say your name on the air. Obviously, you're dealing with the emotionally abusive situation right now, and you don't know the future. You don't know what's going to happen, but you do know that you are taking steps for you. And let me just say this before I comment on this, that this is not something that I'm doing for you. This is something that you are doing for you. And you heard me talk about stuff that helped you springboard and take the next step. And I am so, so grateful for this email. I am so humbled by it. I am so honored that I was a part of your journey. I am a part of your journey. Thank you so much for sharing this. I'm almost speechless because these are the kind of emails that when I read through them, I tear up. I mean, I just get so, I don't know the word, proud. I just get so happy inside that this person is taking charge of her life. She is not the puppet on the string like I talked about in the last episode. She is taking charge. She loves herself. She loves her kids. And I'm not saying that if you're in a situation like this, you don't love yourself and you don't love your kids. I'm just saying that you get to a point where you realize enough is enough and I have to do something even if I don't know what the future holds. And that is a massive step onto an invisible bridge. I always think about the third movie in the Indiana Jones series where there's a giant chasm and Indiana Jones does not know how to cross it. And one of the passages he was reading that is helping him get through this maze of booby traps and stuff was you have to take a leap of faith. And he cannot leap across the chasm. It's just too far. So he decides to take a step over the ledge, hoping with faith that something will be there to catch his fall. And I won't give away what happens, but if you haven't seen it, it's a good movie. But that reminds me of taking that leap in any type of situation where you have no idea what the future holds. You might even think that you're not going to survive. You're going to die. I mean, you might have these thoughts like, I can't survive this. How can I do it? And sometimes it does take a leap of faith. Sometimes it is a matter of telling yourself, I don't want to experience what I've been experiencing anymore. And that's it. That's what she did. I mean, there's a lot more involved, of course, but she came to that decision herself. I helped. Her therapist helped. All the stuff she's read, all the videos she's watched, everything helped. Everything was a little bit of that construction of that springboard to help her with that leap. There's guidance from all these places. And so I look at something like this. I am so touched, and I just want to let her know that I couldn't be more happy for you. And I'm also here to say, and you already know what I'm going to say, it's going to be hard. It will be hard. This is a difficult transition because quite often the emotionally abusive person becomes the nicest person in the world when you're leaving them. They say all the right things. They do all the right things. They show up in all the right ways because they don't want to lose you. And what do you represent to them? I mean, you represent a lot of things. First of all, they may actually believe that they love you in a healthy way. They may actually believe it. And if they're toxic, it's not healthy. So there's a kind of love that they have mixed in their mind with toxicity that they think is healthy, that they think is good. And so what ends up happening is they will say things like, I love you so much. Isn't that what you want? I love you. I care about you. I respect you. I want you to be happy. They'll say all the right things, and they may actually believe it. Emotionally abusive people will say things that seem really heartfelt. It seems so genuine. But the problem is they're so focused on convincing you that they are the right person for you that they are missing the boat on what they need to do for themselves. And an emotionally abusive person needs to work on themselves, needs to heal themselves. They need to show up in a different way completely before you can ever see them as a healthier person for you. So it gets harder if the emotionally abusive person gets nicer, because now they're doing all that first date kind of stuff. They're showing up in ways that look amazing. That's one aspect of this. The other aspect is that they get meaner. So you have to look at it this way too. Some emotionally abusive people will get meaner. They'll get uncharacteristically hurtful. They will do things that are just over the top. Some of them will make your life miserable. It could go one way, it could go the other, it could go a whole different way. But it's going to be hard because when you're in a relationship for that long, you've actually developed feelings for the person. Otherwise, you probably wouldn't have been there that long because you're always looking for those good qualities to come back out. You're always hoping that those good qualities come back out, that they might still be in there. That person when we first met, or that person I've always known you to be, where is that person? And so you stay in relationships like that, looking for that person that you saw a long time ago, but they never show up. And so you have to make the choice. You have to take a stand. You have to say, you know what, I don't want to be treated like this anymore. And then you make a decision. And this is what this person who wrote to me did. She made a decision. She decided, I need to do this. Enough is enough. She's hit bottom. When you hit bottom, that can be a very good thing, because usually the bottom is where you spring off and go back up. You know, I use the pool analogy. You're swimming down, you're holding your breath, you're swimming down, it's getting deeper, the pressure's getting greater, it's getting darker, it just doesn't feel good at all. And you're like, oh, I don't think I can hold my breath anymore, and I'm starting to lose it. I'm starting to feel terrible. And then you feel the bottom, and then that is the breakdown point. That is enough is enough. And you push back up, and you're on your way back to the top, knowing that you're going to hit air. You're going to be breathing oxygen again, and you're going to see the light of the sun, and you're going to be able to breathe oxygen, and your life is now changed because you hit bottom. Sometimes that needs to happen. Sometimes you need to hit bottom. Sometimes you need to go through some very unhealthy stages to get to bottom. This is why it's so important to not be in denial, by the way. I mean, I don't mean to talk down to you or anything like that, but if you are in denial about what's going on, like, well, maybe he or she is doing this because this and this, maybe, they'll change, maybe this, maybe that. You need to snap yourself out of that denial and see what's happening in front of you today and how you're being treated. Because if you're being mistreated, there's nothing to deny. You just have to accept that's what's happening. I mean, this is what she said. I can't believe I'm saying this out loud. It doesn't make me feel good to say it out loud, but at the same time, it gives me strength. At the same time, it's liberating. It's liberating to say, I am a victim of domestic violence. Yes, emotional abuse is domestic violence. I mean, in marriages and relationships. If it's a family member or a friend or a coworker that's doing this, may not be domestic violence, but it sure is emotional violence. It sure is a controlling, manipulative thing that someone's doing that I would call emotional violence. And, we use the term emotional abuse. And I also throw in there control and manipulation and deception and coercion. And it can get worse from there. I mean, there could be some severe emotional abuse where the person is completely dead inside. I hate hearing about that. Someone who's just completely dead inside because they've been with somebody for so long. And they're in this state of mind and this emotional state that they have a hard time getting out of because they fear the unknown. They fear the great void beyond their decision. My mom dealt with this for 40 plus years. She was with an abusive alcoholic for all that time, but she didn't want to take the steps to get a divorce because she was too afraid. I mean, yes, she was afraid of him. Absolutely. That's a different danger. When you're afraid of the person and what they might do to you, totally understandable. Nobody knows what you're going through and the fears that you have. But if you're afraid of the person, like they might actually hurt you, totally understandable. That's when you really need to take charge of your life and find help, find resources, do something about it instead of doing nothing and staying in a situation that is highly, highly toxic for you. That's what my mom did. She stayed in a situation that was highly toxic for her, even though she had several family members that said, we will put you up, we will protect you, we will take care of you, and he won't be able to get to you. So even though she had these resources, she had this fear. Now, I don't think it was all about fearing what he would do. It was also fear of not knowing what the future holds, because she's been with this guy for 40 years. That's been her financial security, her stability. He pays the bills and he owns the house and on and on. So there's a lot tied into it where somebody may not want to make the decision because they think they're going to end up on the street. They're not sure what's going to happen to them, or they just won't even consider what would happen and not even entertain a decision to leave because the fear of the unknown is so great. When the fear of the unknown is so great, it puts you in that rut of indecision and you're stuck. And then you go into maybe a denial stage, like, well, maybe it'll get better, maybe this, maybe that. And that fear that keeps you stuck is what keeps you in bad situations. And coming back to this email, she has no idea, and this is why I shared this with you today. She has no idea what's going to happen next. I mean, she may have thoughts about it. She may realize parts of it, what's going to happen, divorce and a big fight. I mean, who knows? But she really doesn't have an idea of what life is like without this emotional abuser in her life. She has no idea. That's been her life for the last 13 years. And that feels like a lifetime to her, I'm sure. But what's going to end up happening is that she is going to start thinking clearly because the person who's been the major negative influence in her life is no longer in her head. It's going to take a while. The person who wrote this, let me just tell you, it's probably going to take between 2 and 4 months, usually around 2 to 3 months, but between 2 and 4 months before you actually start having your own thoughts that aren't influenced by anyone else. Your own thoughts. What's that like? And I mean uninfluenced, untainted by anyone else. And when that happens, you're going to be shocked. This is what happened to my mom. She started having thoughts that didn't contain the toxic person in her life. A thought came to her mind that didn't have the influence of that toxic person in her life. And that's when she started making better decisions for herself. That's when the doubts started going away. It just takes a little while to flush out that brain, because your brain includes all the toxic elements from your past and from the recent events. And it takes a while. It takes 2 to 4 months. And, my own work, I've seen this, where the toxic person in your life, when they're no longer in your immediate space and in your proximity, your head starts to clear of the fog and you start thinking clearly. And it feels so good, because when you think clearly, you start to trust yourself again. You start to get your instincts and your intuition back. You start to feel good in yourself again. And being in that space, you're like, oh, this is what life is supposed to be. This is how I'm supposed to feel. It's a good feeling. And I'm not saying you have to separate or divorce to experience this, because like I said in the last episode, you could go through the steps of separation. You can go through the steps of being apart, and then you both learn and you both heal and you both show up as different people again, and you might be able to meet again from a new place, from a new perspective. It may not happen. I mean, the person who wrote the email probably never wants anything to do with her husband again, but it can happen, which is why I'm saying it doesn't have to be a divorce to help your head clear. Sometimes it's just making a decision. You know what? This is my decision. I will not accept this behavior anymore. That's my decision. And then that starts the process of your head clearing. Again, it takes a little while, but it does happen. Or your decision could also be, I'm going to talk about this and I'm going to bring it up. I'm going to tell this person, look, you're being emotionally abusive and this is what you're doing. And I'm going to list the exact behavior that I don't like. It's harder to do that when you're being emotionally abused, because your head is usually foggy and you're tricked into thinking that it's your fault. So you have to be really careful about that. But if you're in a heavily emotionally abusive situation and your head is foggy, 99 times out of 100, you need a couple months at least to get your head clear so that you can start thinking clearly. Because what happened with my mom is 2 months after she separated from my stepfather, I asked her a question jokingly. I said, so if he came back and wanted to move back in, what would you say? I mean, I was joking. And she goes, well, I don't know. And I looked at her and I was like, what? What do you mean you don't know? She goes, well, I don't know. I might consider it. And now I thought she was joking, but she wasn't. She wasn't joking because her head was still foggy. This was 2 months after. Her head was still foggy because it was still entertaining thoughts that it might be better with the toxic person than without. And so I just let it go. I didn't convince her one way or another. If this is where she is, then this is where she is. It's where she needs to be. It's how her mind is processing stuff. I was wholly against it, but this is where she was. So I let it slide. I didn't say a word. And then I would say about 2 weeks later, she came up to me and said, when I said I would consider him moving back in and being together with him again, and I'm not going to say this word for word, but she said, I don't know what the F I was thinking. She actually used the word, which she doesn't swear too often in front of me, but she said, I don't know what the F I was thinking. And she said, that is ridiculous. I would never do that. And to hear her say this, I was like, oh, thank God. Your head is getting clear. The fog is lifting. And she goes, I don't know what I was thinking. Why would I think that? And this was very revealing to me, because seeing her change like this, she went from thinking that it might be a good idea to reconnect and see what happens because, that's the life I knew and that's what I'm used to. But her thought process was different as soon as the fog lifted. When the fog lifted, she was like, what? Who was that person? I would never do that. I would never, ever entertain that. I would never let him in the house again. And from that point on, that's how she felt. She came to an understanding inside of herself. She became clear. And this is what happens after you get out of a toxic situation. The mind begins to clear so that you can think clearly and rationally and logically, and also connect with your real emotions and your real thoughts and feelings of what's going on instead of the ones that were fed to you over the months or years. You start to have a clear perspective and you think straight. You think normally because for so long you weren't thinking normally. So that's all I wanted to say in this episode. I wanted to read you that email to give you some hope, to give you some inspiration that it's just because you might know someone or you're in a toxic situation or you're entertaining separation or divorce or whatever you're going through, it can be done. And yes, it can be scary as hell. And yes, the leap of faith may reveal to you a path unknown, but you end up taking it anyway and learning what you didn't know and facing your fear of the unknown so that you can build more confidence in yourself and do what you need to do for you. That doesn't always mean it leads to divorce. It doesn't always mean that you'll never talk to the person again. It just means it's the first step to lifting the fog and starting the healing process. Because whatever happens after you make the decision, you're going to be so much clearer in making more decisions after that. If you never make a decision, you're never clear. You have to reach clarity so that you can reach a new space inside yourself and make a new path for yourself and even for the other person. Because like when I was married, when my wife kicked me to the curb, it was the most beneficial thing that could have ever happened to both of us. I hated it at the time. I was sad. I was hurt. I was suffering. And it was the best thing that ever happened because it finally took me out of my trance. I was in a judgmental space. I was in an emotionally abusive space. And I had never changed that until I experienced a loss so great that it shook me from the trance-like state I was in. It's probably not the best way to put it, but I was in a pattern that I wasn't changing, and it needed to change. If I wanted to find happiness, if she wanted to find happiness, if anyone that I was ever going to be with wanted to find happiness, my pattern needed to change. I want to thank this person again for writing, and I want an update. Send me an update in a few months and tell me what's going on. And I want you to also be prepared for the difficulties and be prepared to hear things that you're going to hear that make you think that maybe that person's changing, and just keep your radar on and just remember the big picture that you are not out of the fog yet. When you're out of the fog and you can make clear decisions, the ones that you can stand up for and say, you know what, this is what I want in a relationship and I won't accept anything less than that. When you're in that space and you can make those kinds of decisions, then anything's possible. I mean, this is where your healing truly is in the ability to create boundaries in your life and make sure you honor those boundaries and no one else violates them. That is a massive step into healing and makes the unknown a lot easier to face. I hope this helps anyone in a similar situation, and I appreciate you tuning in. Share this with others that might benefit. Love and Abuse is the official podcast of the MEAN Workbook, an assessment and healing guide for difficult relationships. It contains a 200-point checklist to help you not only pinpoint the exact behaviors causing the difficulties in your relationship, but also clearly reveal to you why you leave so many interactions feeling bad. The workbook will help you make the next best relationship decisions for both of you. Use it to understand your own behaviors and how they affect those you love, or use it together to reveal issues that you both need to work on. Visit loveandabuse.com for more information. This show exists to remind you that you are not alone and you're not going crazy. You deserve to be treated with respect and kindness. You deserve honesty and sincerity. You deserve to be treated as worthy and significant, because you are. Thanks for joining me today. We'll talk again soon.